All right, guys, welcome back. Got a special guest, and I say that a lot of times, special guest, but this one really is a special guest. This is my older brother, Mark, and I know some of you have seen him on my social media, his social media, and my older brother and I grew up best friends together, really. I mean, we played baseball together. We were always doing everything together. That didn't mean that we didn't hit each other and fight and wrestle. Literally, we took wrestling around the same time too, and so we learned to wrestle, and then we were always wrestling. I felt like you were always a little bit bigger than me, so it was really hard to like pin you down, and if you pinned me down, I was like, dang it, because I couldn't get up. And we were probably maybe at that time 15, 20, 25 pounds at the most apart, but at that gap in middle school, it's tough to overcome, but that was fun. I mean, I felt like we had a great childhood. I felt like we're blessed in a lot of ways. Every childhood comes with challenges and stories and things that hold you back. But I think there's a safe place to say that our kids are going to feel the same way, and that we can be okay with that. We'll do the best that we can. And I think it's okay to say that we're okay with that with our parents and still love them dearly and are grateful for everything that they gave us. They gave us a great life. We'll probably dive into that a little bit, and then you've lost like 100 pounds.
Pretty close, yeah.
And if we look at pictures, you know, from 3 years ago when you started this health journey.
Are you going to throw pictures up on this thing?
Luke, are you going to throw pictures up on this thing for us? Okay, Luke's going to throw a picture up right now, Luke. This is the picture of Mark 3 years ago, and this is a picture of him today, both dressed up at weddings, essentially, or at the temple, we'll say, the LDS temple. Weddings. And pretty drastic difference. So anyway, you've been on an incredible health journey, an incredible, I'll say mindset journey for sure. Your mindset has completely changed and it's still changing.
Oh, yeah.
And so without further ado, welcome my brother Mark into the studio. I think you guys are going to love this episode because I think a lot of you have been inspired by his journey. So welcome, Mark.
Well, thank you. I have to say, I think I weighed in at 210 this morning. I think you're right around there too.
I weigh 210 right now.
And I don't think I want to get on the mat with you right now. So you're talking about you pinning me. And I think it'd probably flip-flop at this point. So.
Well, I had it better because if you were older and stronger, so then I just had a chip on my shoulder all growing up. You're always just a little edged. You edged me in school and you edged me out and everything. So I just
it's
always
a little different
chip.
when you're younger, for sure. Your body's developing and growing a lot faster. But.
Yep. Anyway, that's funny. Let's go through. I mean, you're almost 300 pounds, and you lost almost 100.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where you want to start, but I think that is a great topic to go over in this podcast. Take us through it.
Yeah. Back in high school, I don't know if my eating habits necessarily changed when I was an adult. But back in high school, it didn't really matter. Like I could eat as much as I want and just completely I think a lot of people can relate to this. You just eat so much, you're so stuffed, but you're so active. I've played 3 sports, baseball was the main one, but did some wrestling, did a little bit of football. But we were always outside doing stuff if we weren't playing Nintendo.
Nintendo 64 to be specific.
Yes, but then it evolved into the GameCube and yada, yada, yada. We don't need to get into that, but we were outside a lot and doing a whole lot. And so we were burning all those calories off. When I left for my mission, when I was 19 in the MTC, automatically started seeing the weight gain, because you're just sitting, you're sitting and learning and memorizing. And, so gained, a chunk of weight there. And then throughout the mission, I just don't know if I was really prepared emotionally to deal with the hardships of being yelled at and, just being a missionary and preaching about Jesus Christ. There are people who don't appreciate that, and there's a lot of stresses that come with that. And I internalized a lot of that. And so food was my escape.
Right?
Numbed
it. Yeah.
And so, I left for the mission. I was about 180, I think. And when I got back, I was about 260. And I went to Toronto, Canada, if anyone's wondering. And it was, it wasn't all just doom and gloom, right? I had a great time on my mission, and appreciated all the things that I did learn and was able to do there. But, in that aspect, I wasn't prepared for what I was about to do on that mission, right? And go through. So I come back, I actually take a lot of that off. And then for the next 10 years, just fluctuating, right? It's take it off, put it back on. And every time I put it back on, I always put on a little bit more than before, right? And so to the point where I'm 30 years old, I'm 34 right now, 31. And so we're talking spring 2020, and I'm about 300 pounds. I may have been even more than 300 pounds. I wasn't weighing myself because I didn't want to. It was depressing.
Sure. Yeah. I wouldn't want to.
But
most people wouldn't. Yeah. And I think that's part of the problem. We can just call that out. I think people don't want to accept reality.
You don't.
And I've been in similar situations where it may not be weight, maybe my bank account, it may be my consistency, and maybe showing up for my wife and maybe showing up for my kids, but we don't want to take a look at the things that hurt.
Right.
But that's the thing that usually is going to be the catalyst to help us.
And that's really what I learned that I needed to attack directly if I was going to make any lasting change. It wasn't about the science of calories in, calories out, eat cleaner and all of that. All of that's true. It's science, it's reality.
Right.
Right. If that's all there was to it, everyone would do it.
Mm-hmm.
But we have all of these emotional traumas and mental issues and baggage that hold us back from actually achieving what we want.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's spot on, because it is science, and I think that not all fitness trainers are this way, but an issue that I have with a lot of fitness trainers, and this is any industry, you're going to have good and bad, or people that are more advanced or less advanced. It's so easy to be a fitness trainer because it's like, yeah, calories in, calories out. Do this, you'll look like this. Don't do this, you'll look like that. But where does all the other stuff come into play? Where do micronutrients come into play? Like how healthy you really are, how you feel, how do your hormones come into play? But then you're talking about your mindset and what's going through your brain and who you're becoming. And that stuff is more lasting, because then that's just new software that you identify as something different.
Right.
And if you don't change that, then you're just going to go right back to your old software.
Yep.
And that's what you did multiple times. You just go up and down, right? Is what you're saying.
Exactly right.
And I think that's what's cool about your story, is that you're 3 years in and you just keep compounding upon what you're building, right? Like you keep getting better in all areas of your life because of those habits and traits and skills and things that you've learned in the past. It's a good foundation. Do you agree?
Would absolutely agree. And it's been a long process, because changing your mindset and who you are and the process of becoming, at least, maybe some people can do it faster than me, but it takes time. I don't think it has to. I think there's faster ways to do it and slower ways to do it.
Yeah.
But I think maybe to my credit, one of my strengths is that I can just keep showing up every day and just not quit, even if it doesn't seem like I'm getting anywhere.
Yeah.
So, and I've combated that a lot.
I felt the same way about myself. I don't mean that in an arrogant way. And I see the same thing in you. I don't mean that in a all right, we got this, bro. Like Mario and Luigi. But I don't mean it in that way, but to accept that, hey, yeah, I think we are very consistent human beings, both you and I. I don't know if I've ever really put a finger on where that comes from. And the reason I say that is because we've been in groups where I even national groups, but a bunch of different groups, baseball, like teams and sports. And I just always felt like me and you had something that was different. Like the consistency that you and I had. I mean, we would go down to the field every freaking day and every day, except Sunday. But we would be there every day. And that's the only thing, if I could pin something down that helped, is just getting like deep into sports.
Right.
Because how you do one thing you care about is how you do everything you care about.
Exactly. Well, and I think we can owe a lot of that to our parents. You know, mom was very much like, you just get it done, right? It doesn't matter.
She still is.
She's still like that, yeah. She's a little softer around the edges, I think, now that we're grown, because maybe she doesn't feel as much responsibility. I don't know.
Yeah,
for us, but
yeah, we were probably very stressful to be around.
Well, I look back at our childhood with 6 boys,
except for me,
except for you.
That's the truth.
Yeah, you know, we won't go there. But yeah, I think mom had a lot to do with it. She instilled that kind of mindset, and you know, even when you talk about baseball, you know, dad instilled a love for things. And when you talk about the science of stuff and the science of learning, if you enjoy something, you're so much more likely to succeed at it than if you're just hating every moment of it, right? So I think we had a little bit of a, you know, through mom and dad, different approaches that way. You
know, one of the things that I just thought of that I haven't thought about in a long time, I used to be out in our backyard and I would hit rocks with a little old wooden bat and I would just like practice. Dad came out one time. He's like, I used to do that when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And that like made me want to do it more. Right. Because I always looked up to Dad that he pitched for BYU. And like, I thought it was cool that you could call yourself a D1, you know, athlete and stuff. And
right.
I always wanted to be like Dad in that aspect. Everybody, I think every kid, especially boys, like they want to grow up to be like their dad in some ways. A lot of kids. And, I remember one of the things he said was, with baseball specifically, he's like, Eric, all you have to do, I was probably 10 years old at the time. Baseball was just starting to get bigger for me, right? All you need to focus on is just get a little bit better every single year. And by the time you get in high school, you'll be where you need to be. Just focus on getting a little bit better every year. Hit the ball a little bit farther every year. Get a little bit stronger every year. And I think back to that, and that was one of the best pieces of advice that he could have ever given me, because I can do that. I can do that. Now, he could have given that advice to somebody else. And it would have just, all right, cool, Dad. Like, just rolled off their shoulder, went in one ear, out the other, and maybe didn't even make it in one ear. But for me, that just hit home. And I think that is me. And that's how I approach a lot of things in life. If I can just get a little bit better, I still think about it all the time. It's kind of my approach.
Yep. Well, and I think, you know, in the process of getting just a little bit better, I think where a lot of people fall off the boat is that process is not very attractive. There's a lot of grinding. There's a lot of just being in the moment and being like, I don't know if I'm making any difference. I'm here. Right?
Yeah.
I'm not seeing the progress. The progress oftentimes you see over time, like from year to year, right?
Yeah.
Like when you compare your 10-year-old self to your high school self, it's like, oh yeah, huge difference, right? But today versus tomorrow versus yesterday, it's like, I'm still the same as I was, right? And I think it can be really easy to get up in your head and just being like, I don't really need to do it today, or I'm not really making a difference doing this, or why am I, and then start just getting on yourself like, why am I even putting myself through this pain? You know, I think we all deal with that sort of thing too.
I've thought about that a lot. I've thought about, in family dynamics, am I an encourager or a dream killer? Because I think so often, even us, like me and you, or people in general, we have moments in our lives where, like sports, it can be so like, I don't know, like just superficial. Like you can get to a point where you've done it so long and like, yeah, I just kind of reached this point where like, so what now, you know? But it's kind of a dream killer, right? Like, I don't think I'm starting to feel more like it's not about that. Like life is an experience. And so if I'm somebody that's going to preach to my kids, like, hey, don't worry about it too. Like, don't go all in. And it's not like you use those words, but it's how you express it to them. Like, it's okay if you want to quit. You know, it's okay if you don't want to do that. That's fine. You know what? Just take it off. like, am I an encourager or am I destroying dreams?
Mm-hmm.
And I think about that as like, I felt like when I had hard times where I wanted to quit baseball at an early age because the older kids made me cry. True story. Lucas Weldon, if you're listening to this, I can't remember the other kid's name. They were 12 and I was 10 and they said something to me. I don't remember anymore. And I came home crying and my mom and dad just like sent me like, if you want to quit, then quit, but just give it one more day. And I get a little bit emotional thinking about that because again, like just giving it one more day, as long as you don't get off the train, as long as you stay on it, whatever it is, like you'll get somewhere. And then if we can just try to like dial in what are the most important things with the time that you're giving to the sport or to the thing, what are the most important things that are going to give you the best results now, and then measure those. Now you can, like, just because one kid's giving the same amount of time isn't all equal. And the effort that you give and what you're focused on, that's kind of where I'm getting to, is like, you got to be intentional.
Right. You got to be intentional. And I think you got to know why. You know, I think the more you know why you're doing something, the easier you can get past. And I guess going back to the health journey, the spring of 2020, I got a pretty huge why, a why that I hadn't had before. Right. So, and all I have to do now is look back on where I was when I started this whole thing and before, and just be like, it might suck right now. I might be going through some crap right now or whatever. My energy level may not be super high right now, but all I know is one thing. I'm not going back where I was.
Right.
Not going back there. So, and where I was 3 years ago, in March, this is 2021. I was saying 2020. This is actually 2021. Early March, my body started like changing. Like I started feeling some noticeable physical changes where my heart would just start fluttering and palpitating, like noticeably, like big. And that threw me because that threw me into my very first experience with panic attacks. Because I was like, am I having a heart attack? And I had no idea what was going on. And and I apologized to my wife because, you know, she's had panic attacks off and on through her life. And, she'd have a panic attack and I'd be like, it's okay, breathe, you're fine, no big deal, right? Just breathe, it'll go away. And then I experienced it for myself. I was like, yeah, there's nothing you can really do. You just write it out, right? Yeah. But it got so bad to the point where, like, I was having multiple panic attacks a day. I would, especially at night when I laid down to go to bed, I would just lie there and the mind is going 100 miles an hour, because that's when you have time to like sit with your thoughts and not distract yourself with other stuff. And I was having panic attacks like every night in bed trying to go to sleep. And there were many nights when I wondered if I was going to wake up the next morning. Mm-hmm. You know, just being like, I may just have a heart attack right here.
That's a scary place to be.
I was making peace with death.
Yeah. I remember didn't you write a letter to your family or to our
I wrote a text.
You wrote a text.
My memory.
To the group chat, family group chat.
And it took me a couple months to reach that point.
Yeah. It was almost like a eulogy.
Yeah.
That's the best way I could describe it. Yeah. If something happens, hey, by the way, at least I wrote you something. Right. Yeah,
kind of a long text.
And you're 31 at this time?
31. Would have been 31. Yep.
Which is that crazy to think about now that you almost wrote your eulogy at 31?
Yeah. Well, and you're 31, you're like, oh, I'm old. I'm only 34 now, right? And it's like, the older you get, the older you think you are, but it's all relative.
Yeah.
But yeah, I look back, it's like 31, that's like nothing. That's so young.
Prime.
Yeah. 34 is still prime.
Mm-hmm.
People say, oh, 20s, that's where it's at. And it's like, I still feel
I plan on saying my age is prime for the rest of my life.
And why not?
Because screw anybody else that thinks otherwise. It's because they're lazy. You know what?
Right. Well, it's a matter of like, are you just letting life happen to you?
Yeah.
You know, and then maybe.
Yeah, it's a victim mentality.
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
Yeah, but anyway, so you send the eulogy, and I remember it was a Sunday.
Yep.
Morning.
Yep.
And I remember getting the text and then turning to Corinne and being like, "Did you see that?" And we didn't know really what was going on. I think you'd said some things here and there. There's a little bit of chatter, but
that was like the first time that I ever reached out and just
yeah,
shared that I was having a rough time.
Yeah, it kind of hit like a ton of bricks, like out of nowhere, it felt like. And so I kind of was just, it was in the morning. It was somewhat quiet. I remember at the time we were in our other house, and I just turned to Corinne and I was like, "Did you see that?" And she's like, "Yeah." "What's going on?" It's like, "I don't know." And then I get a little emotional thinking about it, actually, because it was a wild experience for me, but I just had I don't have very many, like, lightning bolt moments in my life. But I had the thought, you go over to his house today and just tell him there's two things I want you to do. Shut your mouth, just listen. And then whatever he tells you, just tell him you're not done. It's not your time.
Actually, the words you told me were, "You're too young."
You're too young. Yeah, something like that.
Yep.
And yeah, I didn't mean it was the exact words. That was the feeling that I got, basically. Is it's not your time. You're too young. You're not done. And that's kind of what happened. And I get emotional thinking about it every time I think about it, because it was just so real. It's experience you don't forget. You don't plan on it. You don't force it. It just happens. And I don't know. From there, it was like there was some excuses, I think, that came up came through your mouth, where like, well, I can't because of this. I can't because my schedule. And I was like, screw your schedule. Like, that's not what's important. If you're dead
next week, what does your schedule matter?
Yeah, does your schedule serve you, or do you serve your schedule? And so right. We worked those things out. But I'm curious to know what you'd add to that, I guess.
Yeah, when I sent that text, that was probably my rock bottom. If I remember this correctly, and my wife can probably remind me here, but she has a better memory than I do, but I had seen the general family doctor at that point. And I actually he hooked me up to, I shared, this is what's happening. So he's like, "Hey, we'll hook you up to an electrocardiogram," I think it's called. "And we'll take some readings and stuff on your brain waves," or whatever it is they look at. And I actually ended up having a panic attack on the table, and the doctor came out and he was like, "Yeah, you should see the cardiologist." And when I sent that text, if my timing's right, it was maybe a week or a little while after that appointment, but there's an app where they like send diagnoses and
the results
and stuff like that, right? And there was a result that dropped. There was a diagnosis that dropped on that app that was AFib, atrial fibrillation. I'm not a doctor. Anyway, yeah. But essentially, AFib is
irregular heartbeat.
No, AFib's actually much worse, where
the walls aren't closing or something.
Yeah, and it's been long enough that I don't remember exactly, but it's like if you have AFib, you have a really heightened chance of having a heart attack or stroke.
Okay.
Like your heart could literally beat so fast and not be able to stop.
Does that have to do with the electrical signal to your heart, I think?
So you're thinking of what my actual diagnosis is. So, which is Wolff Parkinson White. But so that was the original diagnosis. He's like, I think you have this.
Okay.
Right. And I started reading up about it and like the potential for heart attack and stroke and percentages and stuff, and like was so overwhelmed. And it drove me to my knees, where I remember very distinctly just pleading to God, just being like, I don't know how to do this. Like, reading up about it's like the best way to stay alive, right, is to lose weight. And that's often the case. But, and I was like, I don't know how. I've been doing this for 10 years. I've been trying. 10 years of data doesn't lie. I don't know how to do this. I'm not capable. So please help. Just completely pouring my soul out. And I sent that text. You got that impression. You came over, and you're exactly right. I mean, I poured out so much like garbage of just like, this is what's happening, and I can't do this and I can't do that. And honestly, I thought when you were coming over, you shot a text back to me fairly quickly. I felt like after I sent mine, you're like, hey, can I come over today? And I was like, oh, great. Because here in my mind, I'm like, here's super healthy, fit Eric gonna come over to my house and be like, bro, let's go, let's man up, let's move some weights around and you'll be fine, right? And so, to your credit, you came and you sat down and you listened to me probably for 20 or 30 minutes without saying a word. And when I was finally spent, where all the words were out, at that point you were like, okay. And I came over for two reasons. One was to listen to what you have to say, and now reason number two was because I needed to tell you that you're too young to die. And so let's work this out. And so then we spent a good amount of time, me throwing out a block and you helping me work through that block.
I think I really want to pause here, because this, I think, is key. There's so many people that come across our path in life where sometimes we just don't think it's worth it to have the confrontation of your story sucks. And that's the blunt way to put it. Or too often we agree with people's soundtracks, their stories that they play. And we just, oh, okay. I don't think we think about that enough. Like, nothing's going to change for that individual unless they can change that soundtrack. And that was what needed to happen for you at that time to be able to start the journey, I think. And it was out of love, and I think that's kind of key with all of it. Is you think about it, like, everybody knows somebody in their life that's struggling in some way, shape, or form, and then you wish they would change, or you wish that they would quit self-sabotaging or whatever. But instead, our conversations as a family will be like, you're around each other and you, so how's it going? And it's like this passive aggressive, like, how are you really doing? Oh yeah. How are you, like, are you staying active? Or like, not even quite that, but they just kind of try to pry instead of actually like directing their questions towards the actual source and then trying to help somebody change their minds. And that's a difficult thing to do. I'm not saying it's easy. Yeah. I'm just saying, like, so much of our conversation in families and day-to-day life is worthless.
Well, and it's tricky, right? Because the timing matters. Because I mean, we had conversations, I'm sure, before that, and mom and dad and other people meaning well and wanting to help. But where I was at mentally, I was just internalizing that as, I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, I can't do this, right? Like, look at me. And so And so like I would take that and be like, they see me as fat and overweight and not worth much. Right. And that's how I would internalize it. And so it all has, it has to be the right time too. You have to be able to recognize when the person's ready to receive. And as hard as rock bottom is, sometimes we need that in our life, because that gives us the motivation really to start rising, because rising and growing is painful.
Yeah.
But it's a good pain.
Yeah.
It's much preferable pain.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've thought about this, been thinking about this concept that, sometimes as humans, we look at other people's lives to be able to get a blueprint for exactly how things work. And we have to find the answer, or we want to know the answer. We want to know the blueprint. We like a recipe to baking something. And we think, oh, okay, well, in order for me to change, I need to hit rock bottom. And I think that's not what we're saying right now. I think we both agree.
Yeah.
We're not saying that is the answer. I think what we're really saying is it's a tool.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tool to be able to help you get there. I think that applies in all aspects of life. I think it happens to the individual the way that the individual needs to have it happen.
Right. I think, there maybe is somebody listening who feels like they're at rock bottom. And so, maybe specifically for that person, just saying that there's still hope. And the fact, I look back at where I was being so overweight and hopeless and just feeling like I had no power to make any difference in my life, that my fate was sealed. Yeah. And now I look back and I just go, look how far I've come and look how much I feel like in the journey of climbing out of that. Not only have I learned so much and gained so much power for myself, but I feel like I can now relate to people who are feeling that way, and just being able to show like the difference, be like, this is where I was. You can see it. Yeah. Right. That picture that you threw up.
That Luke threw up.
That Luke threw up. Thanks, Luke.
Luke throwing everybody.
And here's where I am now. Right. The deeper your rock bottom is, the more potential you have to make a difference. And I think, when we're in the rock bottom, we don't see that. We feel hopeless. We don't feel like we have any power. But think of some of the most influential people in the entire world. And a lot of them hit that rock bottom. And because they hit that rock bottom, then they grew to understand how to really provide value for people and to make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, this is an interesting thought. I won't take too long on it, but basically I remember thinking and seeing that pretty young. I thought, oh, cool. Well, what difficult thing do I need to go and seek out so that I can hit that rock bottom so I can help people? And it's like, no, that's not how life works.
You don't have to.
It just finds you, and then it will be something that you really don't want, and you will have to find a way to climb out and figure it out. But then, like you said, you can relate with so many more people that are going through that. And then it brings a depth to you that people can relate to.
Right. So I'm, sitting where I'm at right now, I'm actually grateful.
Yeah.
I'm actually grateful for not necessarily being at that point, but for the way that I chose to respond. So that I can be where I am right now.
Yeah. So where are you right now? What's next? What are you? In 3 years of an incredible journey and consistency. How you do one thing at a high level is how you can do everything that you care about at a high level. So what now?
So right now, still finishing up the physical journey. I started out at that 300-pound point. I was almost 50% body fat. And on my scale's like, you're 47% body fat. And it's like, right now I'm sitting at 23 was the last reading that I had. That was a few weeks ago. I need to go in for another one. My goal is to get, between 15 to 20%. and maintain that. If I want to go further than that, then great. But that's like,
It's healthy. It's good.
Yeah. It's like any person I've talked to or any reading I've done, it's like for my age and everything, 15 to 20% body fat is the ideal healthy percentage to maintain. Right. So that's where the goal is right now. And I'm so close. 3 years later, I'm so close.
Yeah.
So trying to finish that up. And I feel like in the fitness aspect, I've gained a lot of strength and a lot of personal power and confidence. But there are other areas in my life that I'm still working through. And a big one right now is in my financial state. And just working through a lot of, again, emotional and mental baggage of like believing that I'm worth a certain amount of money, or, you know, that what I know, the skills that I have, how to promote myself and how to really demand of the universe, like the kind of life that I want to live. And that requires that I make an income to sustain and support that. Right. And so that's a big one. And even in the family realm, the first 11 months of the health journey, I only dropped 15 pounds in the first 11 months.
Yeah, I remember that.
It was just flatline. Mm-hmm. And the first 15 pounds came off the first month, first 30 days. Mm-hmm. And then it was nothing. I mean, I was shrinking, you know, body composition changes, but a big amount of that work in that 11 months was all mindset, repairing relationships, just sifting through this dung heap of emotional baggage that I had piled into the closet for years. And my wife and I had so many open and painful conversations, just opening up those doors and letting it air out. And we're still going that way. We've worked through a lot of it, and now we're working through a lot of it in the financial area. So yeah, I feel like, I don't know if I said this already, but it's like I'm financially obese, right? Yeah. And so I'm kind of using the same principles.
It was off camera, so yeah.
What's that?
It was off camera.
Oh, it was off camera that I said that?
Yeah.
So it's almost like I'm financially obese, and I'm using those principles that I've learned the past 3 years to start working through and reprogramming the way that I think, the way that I view myself, the way that I approach life, the way that I do everything around making a good, creating the life that I want, really creating the life that I want, that my wife wants. And even just showing our children through the process of what's possible. If you really step into your power and let your light shine. I have the skills. I have the experience. I'm a musician, and I have a master's degree in piano performance. There's so many things that I know and so many things I can do at the piano that the majority of people can't. Mm-hmm. And so therefore, there's so much value that I can give people through teaching and performing and just providing experiences for people like that. And the only thing that's holding me back is just like, well, I'm not really that good. Mm-hmm. This person's better at it than I am. And just thinking of like all the professors and colleagues and all the people who are more qualified than I am, right? But it's like,
right. There's always a bigger fish.
There's always a bigger fish
in anything that you do.
And so, yeah, that's been, as of right now, today, that's where a big part of my focus is right now. It's working through all that.
My word for the year, and I've shared it a couple of times, I think, on this podcast. So, and I'll probably share it several times in the future, but it's unlearn, to unlearn. And I think about unlearning, and, You need both. You need to learn, but I think that's where most people go when they think I need to, have this gap of where I am and where I want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so in order to get there, there's something in the middle, and I've got to learn what that is. And that's how they talk about it. I got to learn what that is. And then there's actions and maybe people I need to meet or whatever, but I need to learn what that is. What I'm suggesting is that learning is still good, but I would say that just as important in that gap is unlearning. Unlearning stories that don't serve you. And it's twice as hard at least. And the reason why I feel like it's twice as hard is because we live in a world where we can go and search anything on Google, ChatGPT. We can even ask people that have experience. We know where to go find answers in today's world. We could go type it in and have an answer in literally seconds. To unlearn is at least twice as difficult, if not more. Why? You can't search it very easily. You don't know what you don't know. And so I've been constantly challenging myself, well, then how do I unlearn? What is the process of unlearning? And I think it's a state of mind that you have to put yourself in to be open to the possibility that I could be wrong. And if you can be open to the possibility in everything in your life, nothing should ever be completely 100%. And that's not fun because it is so closely attached to our identity and who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And when we get rid of that, we don't like it because the ego doesn't like to not know. The ego doesn't like to not have an identity. It's hard when baseball players retire because their identity is stripped away. Or Michael Jordan, when he, retired from basketball, whoever it may be. We have all been through experiences in our life, probably, if anybody's listening to this, that's older than 21, which I think is the majority of the people that listen to this. You've now been through things where you stopped, even just high school. You don't like not being a snow canyon warrior. People don't like unlearning those things. And so we have to get to a place, though, where one, we're okay with being a nobody, and two, we have to be open to the possibility that we could be wrong. And those are two very difficult things to do. But I've learned that the process of unlearning starts there. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's profound. I mean, my spin on that as I hear you say that is just that you almost have to remove yourself from your emotions even. You have to look at, because you think of like looking at someone else. You mentioned people that you see and you're like, man, they're stuck. They're this. If they would just do this, you kind of have to look at yourself that way too. When we're in the midst of feeling the hard emotions that we don't want to feel, we can get caught up in that, and everything, it makes everything become heightened, and it makes change feel impossible oftentimes. And so even just the ability to take a step back and be able to say, I'm feeling this way, as like a separate person, right? Just observing myself and how I'm feeling. And if I was talking to Joe, who I know feels this way, what would I tell him? Mm-hmm. Right. And then being willing to take your own advice. And ego does not belong in that space at all. And I think one way that I've learned that you can kind of tell, kind of what level of that you're on is paying attention. I've heard people call it vibrations. Yeah. Vibrational frequencies. Mm-hmm. There are low vibrational frequencies and high vibrational frequencies. Right. And, so paying attention to the kinds of thoughts that are running through your head, like, this is hard. Yeah. I don't like this. Mm-hmm. And in that fitness journey, my goal really, from day one was, I don't know how long it's going to take for me to get to where I want to be, but today I'm going to feel comfortable in my skin. I'm not going to overeat. I'm going to feel energetic. I'm going to feel happy and healthy. I'm going to respect my body and give it the respect it deserves.
Yeah.
And if I can achieve that every day, then I know that that I'll eventually get where I want to be. That physical reality will take shape to reflect that frequency that I'm on. That's a higher level of frequency, right? When I'm at the gym and I'm going through a particularly hard workout and the heart's pumping and the muscles are burning and I want to stop, I think to myself, this is why I'm here.
Yeah.
Instead of going down that rabbit hole of like, this is hard, I want to stop. How long is this going to go? Oh my gosh, I still have 5 minutes, and you start going down that rabbit hole. That's a lower level frequency. But my attempt at being at a higher level frequency is just like, this is why I'm here. Why would I expect it to be any different?
Yeah.
This is the path.
Yeah. Yeah. Joe Dispenza talks about this and Shane Scott talks about it. But when we're talking about vibrational frequencies, it's the law of attraction. And that's the kind of the energy in which you attract it, I guess. And it's like a magnet is about the easiest way to explain it. Mm-hmm. And so it happens very quickly. If you turn a magnet in where it's, the plus is facing the plus, they bounce off each other. But the second you turn it to where the plus and the minus are facing, that it's instantly slapped together. Mm-hmm. And that's how I like to look at energy and what you're talking about, that all this stuff happens fairly quickly, but how long are you tuning into that? Because it's not about the guy that goes out fishing with his fishing pole and all the gear and all the bait and everything. He sits in his boat and never casts his line in the water. It's about how long your line's in the water. You have to have your line in the water to be able to catch any fish. And so I think it's the same with vibrational frequencies. We can have, a thought that for 5 minutes that's high vibrational frequency, and then the rest of the 24 hours, 23 point whatever hours that we're vibrating, we're just low vibrational frequencies. That's not gonna attract what we want. Mm-hmm. And the last thing I'll say with that is those that hang out in those low vibrational frequencies, they will always play the victim card every single time. Because life happens to them, not for them. Mm-hmm. It does. Those frequencies, that's the soundtrack and the words that play in those frequencies. Fear, disgust, anxiety, all of those things. And if you once you realize and develop this like a muscle, that if I just get better, even when I'm starting to think those thoughts, they're going to come in, and just radiating that higher energy frequency as much as possible, that's what you attract back to you. And the second you realize that you're attracting it back to you, now you realize you have control of what you create. You're creating your environment by what you vibrate out. And then life switches and you go, I have complete control over everything that happens in my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's a great place to be.
So I think Joe Dispenza, the book you're referring to, is probably Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself.
Yeah.
I love that book. That's probably I actually read it only like a month ago, but I've read a ton of books on this topic, and that's probably
one of the
best
deepest, scientific, almost like backed. Yeah.
And, he talks about, and speaking of this, to just be like, whatever journey you're on, there's always going to be ups and downs. Never quit when you're on a down.
Yeah.
Because, and I feel like his part in the book where he talks about how emotions and emotional energy also has a physical reaction, a chemical reaction in your body, right? And when we're used to living on those lower level frequencies and we're living with guilt or shame or disappointment, or just depression or whatever it is that's kind of like our go-to emotion, that has a chemical balance in your body. And when you start making steps to get out of that and to live on higher level frequencies, the cells in your body literally rebel, and they're like, wait a second, like we're used to this. And like talking to the brain, the cells are like looking up and being like, this isn't what we're used to. We don't like this, right? Let's pull you back into this depressive state.
Right.
And so I think we've all felt that going back to health at the gym. You go for a couple days and you're like feeling all energetic and hey, I'm taking my life back. After 2 or 3 days, you're like super sore.
Yeah.
And you're just like, you wake up early in the morning, you're like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
Like, am I even making a difference? And all these thoughts, talking about stepping back and being the observer, all these thoughts start coming in like, am I really making a difference? Is this really worth it? Is this really what I want? And
that's exactly what goes through my head every day right now while I'm doing this thing. Everything that you're saying. And it's just, so I'm going through it, and I completely agree, because you just have to shut off the brain.
Yeah.
It's funny because you're saying the cells are talking to the brain, and I'm like, no, I think the brain is actually the thing that's saying it.
That's the way he put it.
My heart is the thing that knows it's worth it. Like your gut.
Yeah.
In other words, we have terms for it: the spirit, the Holy Ghost, or your intuition, light of Christ. There's all kinds of terminal. I think it's all the same thing.
Well, I think there's something internal inside of us too.
Yes.
Yeah.
We respond to energy, and I think that whatever that is, we just put words to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's high vibrational frequencies, and we can feel that, and we know, because of the feeling of a high vibrational frequency, that that's what we should do. And then the brain goes into survival mode and goes, you hurt, this sucks, stop, we're not used to it, you haven't done this before.
One of the scriptures in the Bible, I literally, so I've been living in this too. This is where I'm working on right now, and just last night or the night before, pulling open the short verse where Jesus says, all things are possible to them that believe, right? And the man who's petitioning him says, Lord, help thou my unbelief.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, all you have to do is believe. And as
first he says, Lord, I believe, and then help my unbelief.
And then help my unbelief, right?
Which I think is so interesting, because what did he really mean there? And there's speculation. But I like to think of it right now in this conversation as there's some belief there, but do you fully believe it?
Right. Mm-hmm. And you could talk about the power of the subconscious mind, but it's like in the past, even the past year, rereading the scriptures, the Bible, the Book of Mormon, all of the words of the prophets and everything, my mind tunes into things like that, of like, be believing, have faith, don't doubt, right? And it's not to say that the doubt isn't going to creep in, right? That we're not going to have those thoughts, but to have that perspective of like, yeah, I'm feeling this, observing that emotion, that thought, but being like, but I know that I'm on the right path. Therefore, I am going to keep moving forward no matter what it takes.
Yep.
And I'll adjust along the way. It's not to say like, exactly what the path is from the beginning of setting your foot on the path. But I think if you just move forward with that belief of like, no matter what happens, I'm going to figure it out and God will help me. There's a lot of power in that kind of mindset.
There's a lot of power in action and staying in motion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then from there, it's tweaking. What tools am I using? Is this the best tool to be able to get me what I want?
Right.
It's simple, not easy. It for sure isn't easy. Your journey has been amazing. I think this podcast has been amazing. I think there's going to be a lot of people that are really interested in listening to this, because they, like I said, I think they've seen you, and like you mentioned, the pictures speak for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
There's obviously something that happened, and we're very visual as human beings, and we can see that that's true. And so I appreciate you coming on. I've been wanting to do this for a while, and I'm grateful that we finally got to do it and have this discussion, because, it's been 3 years of kind of working out with you a lot, and we've had great discussions in the mornings when we work out, and then it's just like, let's just dump it all into a podcast episode for an hour and share it with those that would want to listen to it. So again, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, super excited to be here. Even from the beginning, I mentioned this to you. I was like, I've envisioned being on your podcast, or even just being on any podcast, just sharing the story, sharing hope.
Yeah.
That if I can, from where I was, if I can have hope and gain strength through the things that I've learned, anyone can.
Yeah.
So
I think you'll be on a lot of other ones too. I think once you start down the podcast road, you get hit up by everybody that wants to be, and then they want you to be on their podcast. So you'll have many more.
I enjoy doing it. So
it is fun to do.
There's a feeling of like, if I can just help somebody through sharing my story, and this is a great way to share. So,
yep, I agree. Cool. Guys, thanks for listening. This episode will probably go down as one of my favorite ones. I know it will always be one that I remember. So, hope you listen to this one. I think it's number 41. Actually, I think we just posted 40. So 41 in. We've almost marked a full year, 52 podcasts. We're getting closer. And I appreciate all the support and everybody that listens. I appreciate all those that have trusted me in helping me do real estate deals for them. I was just thinking about that the other day because a lot of this is funded by the people who've kind of put their trust in me to be able to help them in some business setting, real estate or moving or whatever we've done in business together. And I just thought today that I wanted to share that I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the people that have been, and I've helped you buy a house several years ago. So thank you. This paid for this podcast. Good job. I just,
it didn't, but
he's my sponsor and my guest. I only bring on guests that buy houses with me as a realtor. So if you want to get on the Eric Gubler Podcast, make sure that you hit me up as your agent. No, I really do. I appreciate it. Everybody that reaches out and we have a transaction, you become an instant friend. And I really mean that. And I appreciate those because that's what makes this possible and for us to grow and be able to get more content out there. So thank you for everybody. Share this episode. If you want to reach out to Mark, the best way to do it is probably Instagram,
Mark D. Gubler, or I just published my website. It's not pretty. I still need to throw in some of the design elements and things, but it's just markgubler.com.
Hey, that's a good one.
I do a bit on YouTube, trying to grow my YouTube channel right now, Mark Gubler Music. So
he's coming out with a burning piano video here pretty soon, so check that out when it comes out.
It's going to be sweet.
Go follow him on Instagram. I'm sure he'll post snippets on there. He already has little teasers on there, but Instagram, YouTube, go follow him. Guys, appreciate you guys listening this far, and we'll see you in the next episode.